While I was in Germany searching for rare owls and woodpeckers, a strong southeasterly airflow brought quite a few interesting species to the Netherlands, even a potential first for the country, but more on that later. First, let's check which rare waterfowl are still present in the country. That the male Migratory was still being seen at St. Pancras will come as no surprise to many. However, what was an unexpected, perhaps even unpleasant surprise, was that another Migratory was reported on Thursday on the other side of Herugewaard, a female but with a blue ring, indicating that this is an escaped bird. For a species already facing skepticism, this is yet another argument that the St. Pancras bird might also be an escape. We'll see what the CDNA decides. After last week's single-day report of the American widgeon at Patton, it seemed to have disappeared, but this week there were several new sightings. This remains a tricky species to get on your list this year, unless you can chase a report immediately on the same day. The green-winged teal in Zeeland was last seen on the 19th. New birds appeared on Sunday at Lauwersmeer and the wet grasslands near Almere. The Lauwersmeer bird was spotted in the southeasternmost part of Azumakeeg, a location visible from the relatively new watchtower at the Pomp. Another report came from Sneekemeer on Saturday. The photo is of poor quality but does suggest the species. Only one ringneck duck was seen again this week, the one in Herugewaard. This bird was slightly farther north than before and was visible from a close range, resulting in some great photos. Two lesser scaup were reported. First, the well-known bird at Vogelmeer in the Kennemerduinen, often included in birding excursions. Then, of course, the individual at Walbos Ridderkerk. Its location in a densely populated part of the country and its exceptional proximity made it an extremely popular bird, with over 300 recorded observations. The spectacled eider is still around but has become harder to see. If seen, it's now much farther out at sea within a group of common eiders. There were even a few days without reports or only late afternoon sightings. When a message came through on Saturday about a possible spectacled eider flying past in Norway, some quickly assumed that our bird had left and headed north. But nothing was farther from the truth. It was reported again in the late afternoon. Initially, there were no photos, but on Sunday it was photographed again, so there's still a chance it will stick around for the Tesselbeek Day. Our last duck, the bofflehead of Almere. If all goes well, Willem and I will head there soon, and I'll finally be able to show footage of the actual bird. It has been seen every day this week, and more often at the front rather than behind the pipes. Let's hope that pattern continues. Now, onto some new and more exciting species. On Sunday morning, an alpine swift was reported in North Holland. For a moment, it seemed like it might be twitchable, but ultimately it was just a migrant passing through. No photos were taken, but if you get a good look at an alpine swift, it's unmistakable. Any swift seen at this time of year is exciting, as common swift typically don't arrive in larger numbers for another month. Also, on Sunday morning, a passing roseate tern was seen at Camperduin. Camperduin is one of the best places for the species in the Netherlands, but usually in late spring and summer, not in March. If accepted, this will be the first ever March record for the country. IJmuiden was a hotspot for glaucous this past week. In addition to the returning adult in the harbour, a second calendar year bird was seen on the beach. Possibly, or probably, depending on how you see it, the same bird recorded in various locations along the North Holland coast. It was already seen flying over Camperduin on Tuesday. The Iceland gull is also back in the reports. Not a new discovery, but the Zeeland bird was seen again at the same roosting site where it was reported 1.5 months ago. The first black storks of the year were spotted this week, mainly in the south and east of the country, with birds in North Brabant, Gelderland and Utrecht. How great would it be if this species finally had its first confirmed breeding record for the Netherlands? We'll keep an eye on that. The pygmy cormorant remains loyal to its spot in Lelystad Nature Park. However, this week it wasn't the only rare bird seen in the park. Visitors must have been surprised on Sunday when a hoopoe flew out of the park. Speaking of hoopoes, the Ameland bird is no longer alone in the country. A total of 4 additional birds were reported. Besides the Flevoland bird, there was a flyover at Wageningen and a stationary bird at Gelderop. The latter report contained no details and wasn't confirmed by others, which is unusual since a hoopoe usually attracts attention. Still, these records pale in comparison to the 80+ hoopoes seen in southern Britain and Ireland. Our small country was just a bit too far north, I guess. The last report came from Culemborg, where a stationary bird was photographed. If that location sounds familiar, it should. That's because the Jumsleaf warbler is still present there. It has become one of the most sight-faithful individuals of the winter, especially since the Alblasserdam bird had already disappeared by the 20th. The yellow-browed warbler at Zwijndrecht also remains in place. If it sticks around longer and turns out to be a male, there's a chance it could start singing, something much rarer in the Netherlands than the species itself. Speaking of singing Philoscopus warblers, on Saturday a Pallas's leaf warbler was discovered by song south of Rotterdam. I wonder how many birders are skilled enough in bird calls to have immediately recognized it. The bird was still present until midday the next day. After 2 earlier reports of black-winged kite this year, the first one was finally photographed in the far south of the country. Unfortunately, it wasn't a twitchable bird for the locals. Another stunning raptor was photographed for the first time this year after a few previous reports. A male pellet harrier migrating past the Noordkaap migration site, the northernmost mainland point of the Netherlands. However, this wasn't even the most surprising sighting of the migration weekend. On Sunday, a wolf was seen walking past the site and even onto the Waddenzee mudflats. One of the most sought after species at migration watchpoints is the red-rumped swallow, though I'd prefer a twitchable individual so I could add it to my film list. The first one of the year was seen this week, not at a well-known migration site, but at a location where one is occasionally recorded, the northern tip of Texel. The bird lingered briefly, but not long enough for other birders to catch up. This isn't the first ever March record, but it is the first photographed March bird and the earliest ever in the Netherlands. The only other March record was from March 29, 1999 in Breskens. Now for the most remarkable sighting of the week. A southern ringozel was seen at the Bergheide migration site. If accepted, this would be a new subspecies for the Netherlands. Whether it ever gets splits from the ringozel is unknown to be, but a field identifiable subspecies is always worth noting. Keep an eye out for ringozels with heavy white scaling on the underparts, white shafts on the undertail coverts, and a more brownish than black head and neck. This past week, news also emerged that a dart-foot warbler was present from March 13th to 17th on a private nature reserve in Friesland. Now, undisclosed birds always give me mixed feelings, especially in situations where a select few have been invited to see them. Of course, I completely understand that if you have established a private nature reserve with beautiful breeding birds, you wouldn't want it to be disturbed by too many birders visiting at the same time, especially for a skulker like the dart-foot warbler. Moreover, the species doesn't make a difference in the national ranking. On the other hand, most Frisian birders are more passionate about their Friesland list than the national list, and there will surely be some who feel very left out. This time, it's a dart-foot warbler, a species that is recorded in the Netherlands roughly once every 3 years. But what if it was a completely new species for the country? Of course, there can always be valid reasons for keeping a location secret. I personally experienced this firsthand with the only accepted semi-colored flycatcher for the Netherlands. After we identified the bird and received word that visiting was not allowed, we didn't bring anyone else along, not even our closest birding friends. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments below. Furthermore, the rosy starling in Schiedam was reported again, though its exact location remains undisclosed. The observer attempted to find the bird elsewhere in the neighborhood where the location could be shared, but so far that has not been successful. The final species of this interesting week is the Richard's pipit, which was observed in a restricted area of the Northumberland Dune Reserve. For the coming period, my tip is to keep a close eye on groups of northern lapwings. Recently, sociable lapwings have been turning up in various countries, and one could very well make its way to the Netherlands soon. Migration is now picking up, and the expectation is that rarer species will appear in the coming weeks. Don't miss anything. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. A thumbs up and a comment are always greatly appreciated. I'll see you next time.